Picture two people, both 35, earning the exact same $78,000 a year, with the exact same $56,000 already sitting in super. They've never met, but if neither of them changes a thing before retirement, one of them finishes with roughly $200,000 more than the other. Quick reminder before we go further, this is general information, not personal financial advice, and every figure in this video is a modelled estimate based on public research, not a prediction of your exact outcome. So use it as a reason to check your own numbers tonight, not as gospel. Because the gap between these two people has nothing to do with how hard they worked, how much they earned, or even how good they were with money day to day. It comes down to one folder almost nobody ever opens. If you've heard that switching your super from balanced to high growth when you're young can add hundreds of thousands of dollars by retirement, that's true, and that's genuinely a different video's worth of maths. This one isn't about how your money is invested. It's about who's holding it and what they're charging you to do it. Every super fund in Australia takes a cut for managing your money, an admin fee, an investment fee, sometimes an insurance premium you didn't know you were paying for. Some funds charge you somewhere around 1% a year for that. Others charge more than double that for a very similar mix of investments underneath. That difference sounds tiny on a single pay slip. Over 30 years, it is very much not tiny. Let's put names to the two logins. Meet Jess and Dave. Both 35, both on that $78,000 salary, both sitting on roughly $56,000 in super right now. Dave has never once logged into his super account outside of tax time. His very first casual job at 19 signed him up to whatever fund that employer used, and it just carried on, job after job, without him ever actively choosing anything. Jess, a couple of years ago, spent one evening checking her fees against a comparison tool and found she was in a fund charging noticeably more than the market average for a near identical investment mix. So she rolled everything into a low-fee industry fund and never thought about it again. Same starting point. Same discipline with money in every other part of their life. One folder, opened or not. Here's why that one folder matters so much. There are two separate drags working against Dave's balance quietly every single year. The first is the flat fee itself, a straight percentage taken off the top, market conditions completely irrelevant. The second is subtler. Even when two funds hold a very similar mix of shares, property and bonds, one of them can simply be worse at picking within that mix. Australia's own Productivity Commission looked at this and found that even after accounting for exactly what each fund invested in, a real performance gap remained between funds. Some are genuinely better at the job than others, independent of strategy. Put those two drags together, compounding quietly for 30 years, and a difference that looks like pocket change on a monthly statement turns into a completely different retirement. So here's the modelled number from independent research comparing a typical fat cat fund charging around 2% a year against a fit cat fund charging under 1%. For someone on Jess and Dave's exact profile, that $78,000 salary, that $56,000 starting balance, the gap by retirement, roughly $200,000. And before you assume that's just one calculator being dramatic, Australia's own Productivity Commission ran the numbers independently and landed on a more conservative version of the same story. Just half a percentage point of extra fees costs a typical full-time worker around $100,000 by the time they reach retirement. Same direction, same conclusion from the government's own modelling, just a smaller number. And if you stack investment performance on top of fees, not just what you're charged, but how well the fund actually invests it, the Commission found the gap for someone defaulting into a genuinely bottom-tier product versus a top-tier one can stretch past $500,000. That's not the typical case, but it's the ceiling, and it's why this one folder is worth 30 seconds of your evening. Now, if some funds are really that much worse, you might reasonably wonder why nobody's shut them down. Here's the part most people don't know. Someone does check every single year. APRA, the regulator that oversees super funds, runs an annual performance test on hundreds of products. The good news first, in the most recent round, every single default MySuper product passed. If your super is sitting in whatever default fund your employer signed you up to, the test isn't flagging it as an official failure. But underneath that main pool, a smaller group of products, all from just 3 providers, did fail, some of them for the second year running. And under the rules, a product that fails 2 years in a row gets legally locked to new members. It's not just a website telling you a fund is bad. It's the regulator forcing that fund's own hand. The lesson isn't panic. Your fund might be one of the failures. The lesson is that the difference between a fine fund and an expensive one isn't a rumor or a marketing angle. It's something checked on paper every year. So here's what to actually do with this, and it takes about the length of one song. Open the ATO's Your Super Comparison tool tonight. If you log in with MyGov, it pulls your real balance and age automatically and shows every super account you've got, including any old ones you've forgotten about. Look at 2 things next to your fund's name, the annual fee percentage and whether it's labelled performing or underperforming against APRA's own test. You can stack up to 4 funds side by side. If your fund's fees are sitting comfortably under 1% and it's labelled performing, you're already in Jess's position. Nothing to do tonight except feel good about it. If the number looks more like 1.5% or 2%, that's worth 10 more minutes of your evening to understand why and whether a switch makes sense for you. Same salary, same age, same discipline. The only real difference between Jess and Dave was one evening neither of them thought they had time for. You've got the time right now. Make sure you subscribe and let's get sorted.